So everyone needs a plan or a goal, and that's particularly true when you're saving for your retirement. If you don't have a plan, if you don't really know what you're doing, it all just seems very vague and it can be very demotivating. So what I've done is to build a spreadsheet that models people's income, expenditure and wealth over time, and it factors in things like the state pension, looks at the taxes that you're going to pay, and it basically produces an integrated plan that enables you to look at the wealth you'll have when you're 90, so whether that runs out or not, when you can retire, and how much money after tax you would have in retirement. So there are some free spreadsheets online, but generally they're very simple. They often don't look at the state pension or don't consider taxes, so they won't work so well if you have maybe a lot of money in a SIPP and less in a tax-free ISA. So what you need is something a little bit more complicated and something that can be customized to your needs. There are some programs that do this, but often they're just a bit of a black box and it can be very difficult to understand and actually quite expensive to purchase. So what I do is I take people through my spreadsheet as part of my coaching sessions. So I get them to input all sorts of data around ideally when they want to retire, what their income currently is, what their expenditure is, what they might want to spend in retirement. It then produces this data table which is dependent on things like the returns that they might get from investments, and the idea here is that once you know what sort of return is required from your investments, that then helps to put together your investment portfolio, because you know how aggressive or how conservative you can be on your returns. So it models your wealth by type, by year, so you can track where you are against your desired target. So here, this couple, they hit about £600,000 worth of wealth, excluding their property. Providing the mortgage is paid off, they can then retire and start to draw down, initially drawing down ISAs, and then SIPP when that becomes available. And then because the pension starts to kick in, and they draw down the SIPP more, because the SIPP is a good way to build wealth, but it's not a very good store of wealth because of the potential for the government to change how it's taxed. So I look at their wealth by type over time. Then using this table, I can just inquire for each age what their income is, what their expenditure is, and what's kind of going on with the model, and their total assets, and then how their expenditure is related to their assets, so how many years they can spend all of their money. Then we've got sources of income. So initially it's salary, then they're probably going to be living off ISAs, and the crucial thing here is that this part of the ISA probably needs to be a bit more conservative in terms of its investments because it's needed earlier, and then this part of the ISA can be maybe a bit more aggressive, a bit more adventurous in terms of its investments because it's needed a bit later. And then the SIPP here is kind of taken in the middle and used up as soon as it can be in a tax efficient manner. And that brings us on to the tax that's paid. So depending on taking the 25% tax free from a SIPP, you get different amounts of tax that potentially needs to be paid. And here you've got only one SIPP that's available. Here you've got two, so it's a lower tax rate. Then out here you're taking money from ISAs or from a SIPP within the taxable allowance, so you're not actually paying any tax when you're later on in life, which is useful. Other things you can do with the model is that you can put in money that you might like to spend on things like maybe new cars or university fees, or maybe like traveling the world. So you can set up specific financial goals that you're interested in, and this model will tell you whether you can achieve them or not. So there's a lot of flexibility here. I mean, being a spreadsheet, it's actually infinitely flexible. And if you're interested in having me coach you and explain to you how you can use it and really tailor make a solution for you, please contact me. It's ianshadrack@gmail.com or at ianshadrack on Twitter.